Yo, what's up? My name's RetroPat, and I have around 250 or so hours now on the PC version of Dungeon Defenders. You see, I've been relearning this game from scratch over the past year or so. I used to grow up playing it on Xbox 360, and the PC version is way different and way more complex. And I've learned a lot over that past year or so, but even then, I'm really only at mid-game and still have a ton left to learn. But I do think I understand what the new player experience is now like, and I know what it's like to try to jump into this extremely overwhelming but incredible game. So I thought it'd be helpful to make a top 10 list of the things I wish I knew when I started playing Dungeon Defenders. So let's go ahead and stop dilly-dallying and jump into our list. This one happens at the main menu before you even load up your game. When I first started playing and I came back to the game, I played on local. It just made sense. Why click the online button if I was going to play solo player and not really play with other people? But even if you're going to play single player and play like a totally solo experience, you got to play online ranked. It's the only way to actually get achievements in the game. So if you care about Steam achievements at all, if you care about having that progress long term, if your hard drive is destroyed, if something happens, like, I really can't recommend you guys enough to play online ranked. The only time you might not want to play online ranked is if you have like really sketchy internet, or maybe you very often don't have access to internet, then maybe you want to play on local. But even then, I'd probably still recommend maybe just playing on both and playing on ranked as your main account, your main characters. They are separate characters, as you can see. When I go to online ranked, I have 6 level 70 plus characters, and then when I go over to local, I only have like 2 characters, level 16 and level 7. I really can't recommend it enough. For 99.9% of new players, you should be going over to online and making sure you're playing online ranked. And then from there, you can go ahead and just select your character and just head over to private match. That's usually what I do. Next up is talking about the in-game emulator using the F keys. Okay, so Dungeon Defenders is a game. Growing up, I used to have 2 Xbox 360 controllers, one for me and one for my brother, when he wanted to play. But you know what? He didn't always want to play Dungeon Defenders. I know, crazy sentiment. But, so what I did was, I would log on to a separate character using that other controller. Thankfully, you don't have to do that nowadays. We've actually, grown past that. If you click F3 on your keyboard, you will open up a separate window to go ahead and log on to a different character. And then if you press F4, you'll open up another little mini in-game emulator. You're essentially emulating or running different versions of Dungeon Defenders at the same time. So now you have your Huntress. Let's go ahead and bring up this. And then if you press F5, you can do it again. So you can do it up to 4 times that I'm aware of. So it's F3 for one character. F2 lets you control your original character. So here I'm clicking F2. You don't have to, it's a toggle. You don't have to hold it. Then I click F3, and that makes me control my Huntress. You can only control one character at a time. So it's F2 is your main screen. F3 to summon and control that character. F4 for the bottom left, and then F5 for this one. And then if you hit F7, it's going to collapse them all. We'll do that in a split second. But if you hit F8, you got to be careful not to misclick. If you hit F8 and then back to F2 to make sure you're controlling this character, F8 is going to make it so you have one big screen. Even though you have all these characters out on the map, you don't have to actually play the game on this ugly, 4-player split screen, right? Thankfully, we don't have to do that. We can just hit F8, consolidate it all to one screen, and now these guys are on the map. They're gaining XP, they're getting more drops, they're getting huge benefits. Multi-grinding the game with different characters all out at the same time is so important in Dungeon Defenders. They're all out there getting those benefits, but I can still basically play as if I'm, on one character. Now, the map will be harder and things do scale differently based on how many heroes are on the map. So if you're still learning things or a little newer, it's something to keep in mind. You may or may not want to do this depending on what's happening on the map. So for example, like this one changed. It was 6 minions coming in total, and now it's 11 because there are more heroes spawned onto the map. But once again, let me show you. So if I go back to F8, if I hit F7, they will all abandon the defense. It's a nice way to like clean slate, wipe everything if you need to reset. On to number 3, the community is super helpful, but at the same time, there's not that many easy to find guides or resources for the game online, on YouTube. It's hard to find. The best things are probably Steam guides generally. I really recommend joining the Discord. There is an incredibly helpful community, but it may not always be intuitive or easy to find. I'll be linking the Discord down in the description down below in this video. Without help, I do think this game can feel borderline impossible at times. So just having some little tip or advice, it's good. It depends on what type of player you want to be. Maybe you don't want a full-on strategy to like totally demolish a map, right? Maybe you want to, maybe you're still trying to learn and you're like, hey, you know what? I'm trying to beat this map. I don't want it to just be easy mode. But if you have any like small tip or advice, I think the community is very willing to like work around the level of information you want. But maybe you're a hyper efficient player and you want to say, you know what? I want to learn this game as fast and as hard as possible. What's the best strategy, guys? Tell me, please let me know. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Like, no matter what type of information or how much information you want, I think the community is very flexible to trying to aid whatever new players come into this beautiful game. Next up is number 4, and it's honestly one that took me a really long time to learn. But in my opinion, if you find yourself grinding a ton in Dungeon Defenders, at least before endgame, there's probably a better route. This is something that I had a hard time with. I always thought this game was super grindy, and it is really grindy, but not really grindy in the sense where you need to play the same map over and over and over again, right? Like, I think Dungeon Defenders is a game that takes a lot of time, but you actually don't usually don't want to spend a ton of time on the same map. That usually means that there's a better or faster route out there that you probably just aren't aware of yet. So if you're feeling stuck, once again, hitting up the Discord or asking for help is always super encouraged. Growing up, I used to love playing survival on Magus Quarters. I played survival on easy difficulty for like hundreds or at least tens of hours. And I didn't really make that much progress. Like, it took me so long just to get level 70 doing this. And once you get level 70, it starts to become a lot harder to actually level up past that. But I would just grind this map over and over and over again, getting the same XP that I could have been getting just from wave 1 of certain other maps. And now, efficiency is not everything. I don't want every player to feel like they need to play efficiently. If you're enjoying playing Magus Quarters survival over and over and over and over again, have fun. Play the game how you want to play it, please. That's something I really do want to encourage, obviously. But it's always good to keep in mind, or at least be aware, that there's probably a better option. I think the knowledge is power, and as long as you have the knowledge and information to choose and make the own decisions you want to, that's all I hope for. Next up is number 5, and this is going to be talking about how overpowered and OP Wave 1 runs are. So if you don't know what Wave 1 runs are, it's essentially the fact that certain maps, it is very good to just load into the map, as you see I'm doing here on the ramparts. It's only specific maps, things like the ramparts, things like Tinker's Lab, for example. It's these maps where essentially it's so efficient to just go grab the beginner chests, go pick up some mana, and the wave 1 is easy enough, and as long as you can beat wave 1, then the rewards from only beating wave 1 on like difficulties that you would never be able to complete. So for example, like doing the ramparts at like level 70 or so on Nightmare Hardcore, right? Like, there's no way I'm ever beating the map on Nightmare Hardcore. However, I probably could cheese out a little wave 1 victory, right? And you don't realize just how strong that is. As a new player, it's something so unintuitive. Like, why would you grind out, a wave 1 like that? Like, it feels so inefficient and weird. Like, oh, there's no way that doing just wave 1 could be that good. But you quickly find out that doing wave 1 runs like this are some of the best ways to gain XP and gain mana. And it's almost like, it's not something that everyone's going to want to abuse, obviously, because it is a little unintended by the game devs, I would say. But I like it. I think it's a really interesting, unique way to quote-unquote grind. I think it's really fun. I really like grinding quote-unquote elements or aspects like this. Once again, you probably shouldn't be grinding any of these maps for more than like an hour, maybe an hour and a half or so, but you can defeat like wave 1 of the ramparts like this quite easily, and then after this you go collect all the chests, and it's the mana, it's the mythical drop. So now after wave 1, every single chest is going to drop mythicals, and this is a extremely good way to get your first mythical gear in Dungeon Defenders, which gear is like 90% of your stats, I want to say, in Dungeon Defenders. Like, it is ridiculous how much more important gear is versus like level ups in XP and actually pumping your stats into like via skill points. gear is so important. Gear is everything. It's very almost like MMO aspect like that, where so much of your stuff is impacted by your gear. I believe I do have a loop from 1 hour of the Ramparts, so if you're looking for more into this, and I also have a loop from 1 hour of Tinker's Lab. So if you want to see guides and runs on these, I do have videos covering them on my channel. But keep in mind, Wave 1 runs are super good. You don't have to abuse them if you don't want to, but it's more of like if you're feeling stuck, if you want to try something new, I really recommend checking them out. Sometimes broken and efficient things in Dungeon Defenders are some of the best ways to get unstuck in the game. They're one of the best ways to feel free and actually feel like you can play the game again, and I really do encourage them when you feel like that. Number 6 is a tough one for some people to swallow, especially new players if you haven't already gotten it, but man, DLC is a must for this game. Like, DLC just adds so much content, it's ridiculous. The amount of maps is absolutely absurd. I think the DLC like triples the amount of content you have from the base game, maybe even quadruples. And then on top of that, the DLC characters are just so good. You could argue there's a small pay-to-win aspect to it, unfortunately. I think I super acknowledge that, honestly, in Dungeon Defenders. However, I think what happens is the community just kind of accepts that DLC is so good that it's a requirement, right? Things like the Series EV, things like the Hermit, there are characters, the Summoner, for example. Like, I believe these are all DLC characters that are all so ridiculously powerful that they're pretty much a requirement for endgame. The Dungeon Defenders speedrun that I'm aware of uses the Series EV for the most part. Very, very powerful character. They just have towers and stuff that are so good and really impact all of your other characters, which is very cool. Now, thankfully, I will say you can get Dungeon Defenders plus all of the DLCs for like $10 or less, I think, on Steam sales. So just keep an eye out for Steam sales, guys. Obviously, Steam does tons of sales. There's the summer sale going on right now as I'm recording this. If you don't have the DLCs or are looking into picking up Dungeon Defenders plus the DLCs, it's ridiculously worth it. Like, Dungeon Defenders plus the DLCs is some of the best money per you'll spend your time on, like, in gaming. Like, in an entertainment period. It is some of the best, like, dollar per hour spent having fun. I can't recommend it enough. But also DLCs are a must. Next up, number 7 is that Monk Aura stacks are OP. I think that Monk Aura stacks are one of the first like tower combination things that you kind of have to learn to be able to succeed in Dungeon Defenders. I feel like once I started using and once I learned about Monk Aura stacks, that's really when a lot of things changed for me. I was going to use Deeper Well Wave 1 as an example, but then I realized the minions moved too slow on Wave 1. Here is Wave 20. To give you an idea, the minions in this game start getting so ridiculously fast and strong and aggressive. This is how fast I lose, obviously with no tower set up, but I just want to show you an example of like the power level difference. Now, there's no way in any chance, in any tavern defense hell that I ever am able to win this map by just placing one aura stack over here, but to just show you guys the difference of power. So an aura stack is one ensnare aura, one strength drain aura, and then typically one electric aura. What these do is the ensnare aura just slows everybody down, which does so many things. The ensnare aura slowing everything down so drastically is so much more powerful than I ever realized when I was newer. It really allows your other towers to do more damage. Like the ensnare auras slowing everybody down increases your DPS so dramatically because it allows your lightning towers from your mages, your harpoon turrets from your squires, literally whatever DPS towers you have, it just allows them to do more damage. So it drastically increases your damage. It drastically increases your ability to react to the monsters. It does so many things that are so powerful. And then the electric aura is going to help whittle down monsters. Its DPS isn't amazing. Honestly, the main benefit is that it takes care of spiders. Any spider spawns, any stragglers just in the area, or like low HP things that could do a lot of damage like kobolds, it gets rid of those, which is honestly the most beneficial thing. So we're gonna grab all this mana and show you guys just with one aura stack how much it just I'm just hoping it slows the death of the crystal down by a little bit. That's all I'm shooting for here, to be honest. Last time it died so ridiculously quickly. Let's see if this can how much this can slow it down. And then the strength drain aura, look at that, look how slow they are. The strength drain aura gets rid of the lightning resistance, So it makes it so all the monsters could actually be hit. But do you see how much longer we're lasting already here? Now, you know, we're obviously going to go down, but just that one aura stack alone was able to totally halt all the minions at the actual edge of the aura stack. Aura stacks are pretty much used on every single map that I use nowadays. Like it is a, once you get to nightmare difficulty and the minions start getting so quick and strong and powerful, it is so good. The strength drain aura. So the strength drain aura is going to decrease the attack damage of the monsters. So your like ogres and stuff won't be able to deal as much damage to your towers, and they become less of a threat. And then they also lose the elemental resistance of lightning. So your electric aura can now hit everything. Same with your, like your lightning towers, for example. TLDR, monk aura stacks are just kind of OP. Tip number 8, I recommend creating a summoner ASAP. Number 1, just learning about the summoner playstyle. He probably has one of the most interesting playstyles in all of Dungeon Defenders, with his units using an entirely different type of status, or using a different type of number. I'll show you a different resource. Let me show you guys really quick. So on every single map, you have X number of minion units. So here on Deeper Well, for example, you have 60 defense units and 60 minion units. What a lot of new players do, myself included, is when you're just new to the game, you basically just use defense units because every single character uses defense units. However, the summoner basically has his own units. So if you're full up on defense units on every map and you can't find a way to beat it, if you make a summoner, switch over to him mid-wave or build phase, and then build some of the archers, well, now you have a whole extra level of resources to use. It's kind of like if you were playing like an RTS like StarCraft or something, and there was just a whole nother resource that you could like switch to and use if you like switch to a certain character or class like Zerg. Having that whole extra resource there and just not taking advantage of them can be a pretty big waste, and it's pretty drastic. If you have 60 minion units you're just not using on every single map, you're not at your peak efficiency, and you could have way more things to help you go ahead and defeat those maps that you may or may not be stuck on. Minions just get so strong. I think one of the biggest misconceptions that I had as a new player was that, because minion units are that, like, minions must be pretty weak overall. Like, I'm guessing that minions are decently weaker than other towers. It's probably not that impactful. Oh, minions are just kind of like a extra thing if I can get around to them. And that's not the case at all. Minions are just like whole other towers. They're just so strong. Yeah, I think you need to not underestimate how strong minions are. Just spamming archers all over the place is usually what I do. If you're a new player, if you spend the time to just make a summoner and level it up, and just every single map that you play, you just put archers all around your crystal, the amount of like the statistical increase you just gave yourself to now beat that map that you weren't able to is so much higher. The extra DPS you just gave to your map and to that run is so much higher, it's ridiculous. Look at this. Look how many archer minions I can make. Like, think if you could add this many extra towers to your map. Like, not the difference between using minions and using a summoner versus not is the difference between like 20 towers or something like that. It's a ridiculous amount. Please build a summoner as soon as possible. Next up was such an unintuitive one for me personally. This is number 9, and it's to let you guys know that there is an armor set bonus in Dungeon Defenders, okay? So what that means is, do you see how my summoner has full leather on? Every type of armor has a different like type of material that it's made out of. So let's go to armor over here in my boxes, and we can see there's pristine, there's plate, what else? We can see things like pristine, plate, chain, leather. There is mail. Probably one of the more, weirder ones. There's different types. There's 5 or so different types of actual armor material, and having a full set of the same armor type or material, like full leather, gives you a 33% boost, or 30% or so, to all of your stats. It is a drastic difference. You do not want to mix and match. Like, if you have like a chain, a cap, mail or plate grips, like leather feet, like, you need to stop that and fix that ASAP. As a new player, it is ridiculous how much better having the full set is. Like, it is better to have a crappy full set most of the time than a mixed and matched kind of god tier set, right? Like, it's just so ridiculous how powerful and important the armor set boost is, and I only wish I knew about it sooner. That's like number one tipperino. I think that's the most important, is armor set boost. Keep that in mind. All right, honestly, number 10 was a really tough one to swallow for me, but in all honesty, you're probably going to have to play multiple characters per map once you reach the middle to end game. This was not something I honestly wanted. I don't know why I was so averse to this at first, and what I mean by this is basically using multiple different characters, using their best towers, switching off. I can show you guys like what a typical setup would look like. For example, we'll do the deeper well example. It's a weird thing that I grew up basically only playing Squire, so I thought that I was going to be able to play the game with only Squire, and I was drastically mistaken. If you're someone who only wants to play one character or one class and not really diversify, you're gonna halt your progress a lot. But that's also okay. If that's something you want to do, it can be sort of a challenge run. I think that's kind of honestly very, very cool in my opinion. But it's definitely something to be aware of. It's something to keep in mind. So generally, what a typical map would look like is you would go ahead and build your aura stat. Let me go ahead and build that right here. And then what I would normally do is I would press M to drop my mana, swap over to something like my summoner. I would go ahead and set up a bunch of archers to essentially act as a little wall. Then once you have your archers from your summoner, I would go ahead and switch over to something like my Series EV, for example, and go ahead and get some tower boosting beams up. So you would do like this. This is like what my typical setup in Dungeon Defenders nowadays looks like. And obviously, I have videos if you want to see specific maps or you're looking for strategies. I do have videos all over my channel. I'd probably switch over to my mage, for example, right now and set up some like lightning towers. This is like what my current main setup looks like, and I kind of do a variant of this setup on every single map. Now, I do, obviously change it based on the positioning of stuff, etc., but usually you have to use multiple characters, and for some people that's really cool and fun, and honestly I think I prefer it nowadays. I think it actually is very cool and fun to me nowadays. You can even make your own strategies and do different things, but to a lot of players, it's something to tell you guys up front. It's something to let new players know, in my opinion. I think a lot of people kind of brush over it, and I really think it's something to tell new players, like, hey, you're probably gonna have to use multiple characters. You'll probably have to build multiple characters, which means grinding for multiple sets of armor, which I think is all very, very cool, right? I like that part, honestly. I don't know why there was something weird to me about not playing one character per map. I think it's just what I always did growing up, so I wasn't quite ready for that. But it makes sense when you think about it, and I think it's a really cool adjustment to make. So this is what your typical map would look like. Obviously, I didn't do the level ups. I didn't grab all the mana. There's tons of chests and stuff over here. But just to show you guys the setup, usually you would end up going something like this. You would end up going for like multiple character setup. And it's quite a collage of the best resources possible. It's honestly, I mean, it just makes sense. Like, it's a collage of the most powerful and best towers in the game, as opposed to just one mind. It's kind of like how the collective mind is much more powerful than just one person trying to work on a project, right? As soon as you have a bunch of characters trying to help defend a map, it's going to increase your outcome and give you a much better chance for success versus just one character. Like, just Squire towers who have strengths and weaknesses. Why not cover those weaknesses and enable those strengths by using multiple characters? But that's it for me. That is the top 10 things that I wish I knew when I started playing Dungeon Defenders. Hopefully some of this was helpful to you guys if you're returning to the game, if you're a new player, or maybe you're just a veteran who wanted to watch something in the background while you play Dungeon Defenders. I appreciate that if that's you. If this video was helpful, make sure to leave a like on it. It helps me tremendously. Dislike if it wasn't. That's totally okay. And subscribe if you want to see Dungeon Defenders videos every other day. For now, I will see you guys later. Peace, Reno. Hey, thank you so very much for watching until the very end of the video. That means the world to me, and everyone on this list means even more to me for helping support the channel every single day. Thanks so much.